بسم الله الحمد لله وصلى الله وسلم وبارك على رسول الله وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين أما بعد. Let's move forward to where we left off is Bab al-Wudu, the fourth chapter of Kitab al-Tahara is Bab al-Wudu. The author Al-Hafidh ibn Hajar rahimahullah ta'ala, he says, عن أبي هريرة رضي الله عنه عن رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم أنه قال لولا أن أشق على أمتي لأمرتهم بالسواك مع كل وضوء. أخرجه مالك وأحمد والنسائي وصححه ابن خزيمة وذكره البخاري تعليقا. Hadith is narrated by Abu Hurairah رضي الله عنه that the Messenger of Allah عليه الصلاة والسلام said, لولا أن أشق على أمتي. He says, I would have told my followers, I would have commanded them and given them the order to use the siwak, to use the toothstick, each and every time they make wudu, if it wasn't for the reality that it would be a hardship on them. If it wasn't for the fact that it would be a difficulty and a hardship, I would have given them the order to use the siwak every time they offer the wudu. The author says this hadith has been collected by Imam Malik and has been collected by Imam Ahmad and has been collected by Imam al-Nasai, also Ibn Khuzaymah, and Imam al-Bukhari rahimahullah has mentioned it in his book, but in a different way, a way which is called, or in a style which we call ta'liq, meaning it doesn't have a complete chain of narration. It's mu'allaq, meaning that there is at least, or there is one or more narrator missing from the beginning part of his chain of narration, meaning that the hadith is not like the rest of the hadiths in Sahih Bukhari, which Imam al-Bukhari mentions in full, complete version, a full and complete version, in which al-Bukhari narrates from his teacher to the companion to the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. Okay, so it's not the same strength, and it's not the same veracity, it's not the same level of authenticity for Imam al-Bukhari to mention a hadith like this in his book, and for him to mention the hadith with the actual sanad, that is musnad muttasil. You can go back to our classes on al-Bayquniyah, and our classes on Nukhbat al-Fikr, and on al-Tadhkirah, and you'll find a detailed explanation of what's meant by mu'allaq and musnad and muttasil, mawsu'. طيب. This hadith here, inshallah ta'ala, is an authentic hadith. It's an authentic hadith. And there's another version of the hadith that states, if it was, I would have told them to use the siwak in the kulli salah, at the time of each prayer, and not necessarily of the wudu. Khair, inshallah. So the Sharih As-Sanani rahimahullah, he mentions many different fawaid of the wudu and of the siwak and the wudu that comes with the siwak. And he quotes here from a scholar who came before him. He says, قال في البدر المنير قد ذكر أو ذكر في السواك زيادة على 100 حديث. He says there's over 100 hadiths on the siwak. Over 100 prophetic narrations on the toothstick and using the toothstick. فَوَعَجَبًا لِسُنَّةٍ تَأْتِي فِيهَا الْأَحَادِيثُ الْكَثِيرَةُ ثُمَّ يُهْمِلُهَا كَثِيرٌ مِنَ النَّاسِ بَلْ كَثِيرٌ مِنَ الْفُقَهَاءِ فَهَذِهِ خَيْبَةٌ عَظِيمَةٌ. He says, this is just something which is unbelievably strange for a sunnah act, a practice of the sunnah, to have so many hadiths behind it and to support it, for something to be established by this large amount of hadiths, and for many people to ignore it and neglect it, many people to abandon it. He says rather many fuqaha, many scholars of fiqh who claim knowledge of fiqh, they themselves avoid it and they don't do it themselves. He says this is a great loss. Khaybatun azimatun, a great loss, a great loss. Khairan, inshaAllah. So the siwak is a major act of sunnah, and it's something which should not be abandoned, especially nowadays when things are so easy and simple. To have a miswak in your pocket, or a mini toothbrush, or even if you had a handkerchief and you used it and wiped your teeth, or a toothpick, or a Dentec, whatever you use to take the plaque from your teeth and food between your teeth and to clean your tongue and your gums, etc. There's a very long history behind the siwak and behind dental hygiene among the Muslims versus the non-Muslims. Some years ago, I think it was my first year in the master's program in the College of Hadith, I came across an article that was linked to me by a friend of mine, a colleague of mine. The brother's older than me, but he's a colleague and a friend of mine who was studying there too. He lent me some information. It was a disc, a CD of different academic journals and articles. And in that disc, I read an article about an Orientalist, a non-Muslim scholar of Islam, that was speaking on how the Muslims were from the early trailblazers of dental hygiene in human history, and how at a time in which Western Europe, or even in Russia or other parts of Eastern Europe, whatever the case may be, people were in darkness, in the dark ages, before the Renaissance time, or even during the Renaissance time, not bathing, not washing, things like this. The water was so polluted that the people drank only ale. They didn't drink water. They had to drink beer. They had to have something that they couldn't just drink water. The people were living and sleeping in dirt and filth in Christendom. And in Jerusalem and other places of the Muslim world, in the Middle East, in the Far East, in Iraq and Egypt and North Africa and places like this, the Muslims had the siwak. And they had ghusl, and they had wudu, and they had so many other things of hygiene and cleanliness. All right? And it's very strange and very marvelous how today you travel to many Middle Eastern countries or North African countries, or countries in which the Muslims are predominant, and you find them having many dental problems and issues with their teeth and with hygiene of the mouth and of the tongue and of the gums. It's very sad. The Muslims were the ones who were in the forefront of establishing this type of hygiene. And today, when one wants to study dentistry or dental medicine, the first place they think about or look towards is the West. All right, in the non-Muslim countries. And many other things like this. Some historians say that the Muslims were the ones who brought ghusl to Western Europe. They brought the bath to Western Europe and the practice of a normal bath to Western Europe. All right, Allah knows best about that fact. But there lies no doubt many things were taken from the lands of the Muslims to the lands of the non-Muslims, whether it was the Crusades, before and after, etc. So the siwak and dental hygiene, cleaning one's teeth, one's gums, one's tongue, is very important in Islam. Moving forward, it says, وَأَمَّا حُكْمُهُ فَهُوَ سُنَّةٌ عِنْدَ جَمَاهِيرِ الْعُلَمَاءِ وقيل بوجوبه وحديث الباب دليل على عدم وجوبه لقوله في هذا الحديث لأمرتهم أي أمر إيجاب. It says here, the siwak is a sunnah. It's not obligatory, but it's recommended, highly recommended to most of the scholars of Islam. And some of the scholars of Islam hold the view that it is obligatory, that you do have to use it. Naam. Sanani rahimahullah says the hadith that we've mentioned in the chapter proves that it isn't obligatory. And that's because the Prophet ﷺ says, La amartuhum. He says, I would have given them the order. Meaning, I would have made it obligatory. فَإِنَّهُ تَرَكَ الْأَمْرَ بِهِ لِأَجْلِ الْمَشَقَّةِ لَا أَمْرِ النَّدْبِ فَإِنَّهُ قَدْ ثَبَتَ بِلَا مِرْيَةٍ. He says, and the only reason why the Prophet didn't tell the people that they had to do it was because of fear of hardship and fear of difficulty. Fear of hardship and fear of difficulty. So there is no recommended act in this hadith. He says, I would have told them, not recommended, because that's been already proven in other hadiths that is recommended. طيب. والحديث دل على تعيين وقته وهو أن كل وضوء وفي الشرح أنه يستحب في جميع الأوقات. This hadith also teaches us one of the recommended times of using the toothstick. One of the recommended times, and that is when a person makes wudu. When a person makes wudu. So in our modern day application, if you're at work or on an airplane or in a train station or in the masjid, in the bathroom, the wudu station, have your miswak in your pocket. whether it's actual piece of wood and a piece of plastic from overseas, from Medina, or whether it is a mini travel toothbrush or toothpick, okay? Something that you use to clean your teeth. Have it ready for you when you make wudu. Before you make the wudu, when you begin your wudu. He says in there 5 more times in which is recommended for the siwak to be used, even though the siwak is always recommended all of the time. أحدها عند الصلاة سواء كان متطهرا بماء أو تراب أو غير متطهر كمن لم يجد ماء ولا ترابا. The first highly recommended time to use the siwak is when a person wishes to pray. When a person wishes to pray, regardless whether you're making wudu, whether you're making tayammum, whether a person is praying without wudu, anything, no dirt, no water, use it. الثاني عند الوضوء. Number 2 is when you want to make wudu, like we explained. الثالث عند قراءة القرآن. The 3rd time is when you wish to recite the Quran. الرابع عند الاستيقاظ من النوم. 4th time is when a person wakes up from his sleep. He should brush his teeth. الخامس عند تغير الفم. The 5th time is when a person's mouth, the odor or the smell of a person's breath in the mouth changes. And also we know there are other hadiths that prove that the Prophet ﷺ would use the siwak when he entered his house. Now, Aisha radiallahu anha was asked, what was the first thing the Prophet ﷺ did when he wanted to come home? And narration says, يَبْدَأُ بِالسِّوَاكِ. In Sahih Muslim, he would clean his teeth. And this goes to show us the concept of being mindful of what you smell like in front of your spouse. For a man to be mindful of what you smell like in front of your spouse. One of the biggest problems that we find with the younger brothers who want to get married is a great deal of immaturity and a great deal of just being green, extremely green, and not knowing basic principles of life, let alone living with a woman. Okay, many young brothers, they have very bad hygiene problems in the masjid. Their feet smell awful. They don't brush their teeth. They don't put on deodorant. They don't use oil or cologne. They don't brush their hair. They don't look nice, presentable. They don't care about their appearance at all. Okay, how they look, how they smell, nothing is important. And they think that the brother in the masjid is going to give them his daughter. He's not going to marry off to his daughter, and you smell and stink in the salah. Your feet smell in the masjid when you make i'tikaf. This is a joke. So you have to be mindful of what you smell like. Just like you want your wife to be pretty and smell nice and look nice, then you have to be handsome as well and smell manly for your wife as well. So it's a very important concept here. قال ابن دقيق العيد السر في أي في السواك عند الصلاة أن مأمورون في كل حال من أحوال التقرب إلى الله أن نكون في حالة كمال ونظافة إظهارا لشرف العبادة. وقد قيل أن ذلك الأمر يتعلق بالملك، وهو أنه يضع فاه على فم القارئ ويتأذى بالرائحة الكريهة، فالسنة السواك لأجل ذلك وهو وجه حسن. He says, Ibn Daqiq al-Eid, another commentator on these hadiths before him, he says, the secret behind the recommendation of siwak is we are commanded to be in the best way possible, the cleanest, freshest way and manner and state when we seek closeness to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. When we are going to worship Allah, to pray, we should be in the best fashion, the most neatest or the most neat and fresh fashion possible. And this is to show the nobility of worship. That worship is a great thing and an honorable thing. And others, they say, rather it pertains to the angel. The angel that comes and places his mouth on the mouth of the reciter at the time of reciting the Quran. And that if his breath smells bad, the angel will be offended and annoyed. And he says, وَهُوَ وَجْهٌ حَسَنٌ. And there's nothing wrong with this interpretation. We know that narration is not from the Prophet ﷺ. Some narrations say that it came from Ali radiallahu ta'ala anhu, with the angel placing his mouth upon the qari's lips on him or at the time of reciting the Quran. Is it authentic? Is it sahih from Ali radiallahu anhu? It's something that I can't say when I researched it and looked into it myself. And if it is authentic, is it from the Prophet? And if it did come from the Prophet and it was authentic, then we believe in it without a question. It's from the ghaib. It's the unseen. What is this like? How is the angel? We don't know that. We believe in it if it's authentic. And if it's not authentic, then we don't necessarily have to believe in it. صنعاني رحمه الله says ثم ظاهر الحديث أنه لا يخص صلاة عن استحباب السواك لها في إفطار ولا صيام والشافعي يقول لا يسن بعد الزوال في الصوم لئلا يذهب به خلوف الفم المحبوب إلى الله تعالى وجب بأن السواك لا يذهب الخلوف به فإنه صادر عن خلو المعدة ولا يذهب بالسواك ثم هل يسن ذلك للمصلي وإن كان متوضئا كما يدل الحديث عند كل صلاة قيل نعم يسن ذلك وقيل لا يسن إلا عند الوضوء لحديث الباب مع كل وضوء وأنه لا يقيد إطلاق عند كل صلاة بين المراد عند وضوء كل صلاة ولو قيل إنه يلاحظ المعنى الذي لأجله شرع السواك فإن كان قد مضى وقت طويل يتغير فيه الفم بأحد المغيرات التي ذكرت وهي أكل ما له رائحة كريهة وطول السكوت وكثرة الكلام وترك الأكل والشرب شرع السواك وإن لم يتوضأ وإلا فلا لكان وجها. He says here, another issue pertaining to this hadith is that the hadith does not restrict prayer. It doesn't restrict the wudu when a person is fasting or not. All of the time, use the siwak, whether the person is fasting or not. And we know that Shafi'i rahimahullah, he's quoted to have said that once it's afternoon time and you're fasting, you shouldn't use the toothstick. You should not use the siwak after noon when you're fasting, after the zawal, after it's time for dhuhr prayer. And that's because the odor of one's breath, which is beloved to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, will be taken away. And those who differed with Shafi'i on this issue, they say that's not true and that's not accurate. Rather, the toothstick should be used all of the time. Firstly, because the hadith doesn't specify. Secondly, they say that when you brush your teeth or when you use the toothstick, it doesn't take away the bad odor from your mouth, because the bad odor doesn't come from one's mouth. Instead, it comes from the emptiness of one's belly, because the person didn't eat for a long time and he has the smell and the odor of a person whose stomach is empty. All right? Tayyib. So the odor will remain. Now, that's obviously, one can argue on that point. And that's because when a person is fasting and his breath smells bad, he can brush his teeth and it can still help his mouth smell a little better. So, the gases and the person's belly being empty, is that what causes a person's breath to smell? No one is arguing or fighting on that. But it doesn't mean that there's no bad smell in the mouth too. It doesn't necessarily mean that. What's important is the Sunnah is established to use the siwak all of the time. Period. Was that Shafi'i's view or not? It doesn't matter. Alright? And we don't go extreme and overboard for any scholar. If he said something and it is not in accordance with the authentic Sunnah, with the proper understanding, then rahimahullah, may Allah have mercy upon him, and we move with the Sunnah. We go forward with the Sunnah of the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam. Tayyib, moving forward. Another issue is this recommended for each and every prayer, or only at the time when you're making wudu for the prayer? If a person already has wudu, okay? So when they say in the kulli salah, meaning when a person makes wudu for the salah, not just for every salah. And that's not necessarily authentic as well. The hadith says in the kulli salatin, every single prayer. And the Prophet ﷺ says, mataratun al-fami mardatun al-rabb, clean for the mouth, pleasing for the Lord. So it's much more than just cleaning your teeth and having a bad smell taken away or plaque. It's spiritual as well. So it should be used all of the time. Period. The siwak is to be used all of the time. Khairan inshallah. Then he goes on to mention a few more issues with regards to things that are to be used for the siwak. Okay, one's finger. All right. Anything that a person uses, as we said, in the modern day application of these things, such as toothpicks, right? These different things like this, a tongue scraper. All right, if a person used a napkin and wiped his teeth and his gums and his tongue, if that's the only siwak that you have at the time, there's nothing wrong with that as well. And that is permissible or invalid as well, bi'idhnillahi subhanahu wa ta'ala. Now the question is, many people today, they'll say if you have a plastic toothbrush in your pocket, fiberglass or whatever it's made from, they'll say that's not the siwak, ya akhi, that's not the sunnah. The sunnah is that you have to have a piece of wood It has to be a branch, a bark from a special tree in Medina. Is that correct? Is that what the Prophet ﷺ meant? Is that what he said? Did he mandate a specific matter to be used? Or did he mention the thing that the people had and that was available? And did he use himself what was known to the Arabs at that time? Just like the Prophet's medicine, certain things which are clearly based off of spiritual blessing, divine guidance, and other things that was the practice of the Arabs of the 6th, the 7th, and the 8th, or the 4th, 5th century, period. And it doesn't mean that you have to do it like this. Okay, the hadith says, خَمْسٌ مِنَ الْفِطْرَةِ. Hadith and Sahih Bukhari and others, well-known narration, 5 things from the fitrah, right? And it mentions from those things what is istihdad. Okay, does it mean that a person has to use these things to remove hair from his underarms or from your pubic area? Do you have to shave it? Do you have to pluck the hairs and pull the hairs out? Is that even sunnah to do that? Or was that the practice and the tradition of the Arabs at that time? That's how they removed hair from their underarms, by plucking them. That's how they used, or that's how they removed hair at that time, by using a razor. Does that mean that you have to do that? You can't use hair remover, or you can't use a pair of clippers or trimmers or scissors? Doesn't necessarily mean that. Oftentimes, many people, they have a misunderstanding of the sunnah, and they mix up the concept. They mix the concept with form and content. Form and content are 2 different things. The form is one thing, the content is another. The content, meaning the greater concept, is to remove hair from your body and not a piece of steel. The razor doesn't get to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah tells us in the Quran about slaughtering the animals. The blood and the flesh doesn't get to Allah. The taqwa gets to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So many people, they misunderstand the sunnah through these things. Does the Prophet ﷺ put worship on us through a piece of wood, or through the concept of wiping the teeth and cleaning the teeth and being clean? All right, very important concept of misunderstanding the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ. And as we have explained to many classes and lectures, a person misinterpreting the sunnah oftentimes is dangerous, if not more dangerous, than one who just doesn't even know about it or abandons the sunnah. The next hadith. Or before we move on to the next hadith, a few other fawaid. First and foremost is the Prophet ﷺ's gentleness, and how kind he was, and how thoughtful he was for his followers. And it also goes to show us that a leader, an imam, a scholar, should be mindful of not making a hardship upon the people. And we all know the hardships that come from that, and the misrepresentation of Islam that comes from people putting hardships on the ummah. Also, it goes to show us that when the Prophet ﷺ commands us to do something, it's obligatory. إِنَّ الْأَصْلَ فِي الْأَمْرِ الْوُجُوبِ, is that whenever the command comes, that thing is mandatory until proven otherwise. Also, this hadith goes to refute those who say lub wa qushur, or qushur wa lub. They say we have rinds and peelings, and then we have the actual fruit and flesh of the orange or the lemon or the grapefruit. Don't worry about the qushur, the peelings. Growing a beard, thobe, niqab, gloves, eating with your right hand, sitting between the sun and the shade, these things. That's qushur. That's on the surface. We need to worry about the core content of Islam today. All right. Now, obviously, this may be a true statement, which the people want falsehood through which a person is not going to prioritize something that's recommended or something that pertains to something that isn't from the core values of Islam in front of something which is, of course, no one in their right mind. But does that mean that we scorn these acts and look down upon these acts? And who said eating with the right hand, growing the beard, wearing the niqab, these things, who said that that's not obligatory or haram not to do or to do? Who said that it's from the qushur? And the Prophet ﷺ says, he who does this is cursed. He who does this is not from us. He who does this is kada. Who says that that's not a major issue? And who gives us the right to pick and choose what we want to practice from the deen of Islam and cherry pick? And how can you enjoy the fruit and the flesh of the orange if it isn't in its peelings and its rinds? If it grows on the tree or the branch and has no skin, what fly or maggot or dust and wind will get to it? So that doesn't even make sense. The egg is preserved with the shell. Without a good shell, there's no egg. All right? So anything that's from the deen, we try our best to implement it and to call to it. And we don't make a difference between it's obligatory, it's only recommended, it's outward, it's not inward, it's a sunnah of this, but it's not a sunnah of that. Anything in Sunnah Kitab and Sunnah, we try our best to take. And that's why the scholars of Hadith mention all of these issues in their respective books. Imam al-Bukhari, he talked about the core issues, quote unquote, and he talked about the surface issues, quote unquote. He spoke on jihad and politics, and he also spoke on how to eat and how to sleep. All of these things, the Sunnah has given us guidance and instruction. And Allah Azza wa Jalla Himself has not made a difference. وَمَا أَتَاكُمُ الرَّسُولُ فَخُذُوهُ. Whatever the messenger gives you, take it. وَمَا نَهَاكُمْ عَنْهُ فَانْتَهُوا. And whatever he forbids you from, then stay away from it. So this hadith, it also shows us, it's from the Sunnah to use the siwak, and it's from the Sunnah to make wudu, and no one can come and say that there's no wudu in 2018. Just have a pure heart, and wash your hands with sanitizer and alcohol rub, and that's it. Khalas, you can pray. You don't have to make wudu. Wudu is only for Arabia. That's batil. All right. And the hadith also goes to show us that that's sufficient for the fawaid. As far as now, we will stop with this hadith, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala surely knows best.